Welcome back. The way that we can restore our country is by putting value back into the meaning of life and by keeping the family unit intact. But the policies of the left are doing just the opposite, especially when it comes to African American families. And here with more, we have Reverend C.L. Bryant. He is the founder of One Nation Back to God. We have conservative activist Stephanie Rubach. And we have pro-life activist and founder of Live Action, Lila Rose. I want to thank all of you for joining me this afternoon because this is a big topic of discussion. This was center stage during this last campaign cycle. And this is also the biggest threat to the American family, which I think black, white, it's just the American family. And I was talking to you, just, we were so eager to get in on this topic right before, when we were on break. I brought up to Lila that there is over 60% abortion rate in New York City, which made me physically ill when I read this.
You know, Dana, it's amazing. And in our film, we deal with this issue in Runaway Slave, that evidently the black community was targeted by the Negro Project back in the 20s, actually. And when you see that more black children in 2008 were murdered in their mother's womb than were born, you can't imagine how a 13% population can reach that figure. And so it's an atrocity that's going on that we all should be very concerned about.
Yeah, I think that it's basically genocide, and that is really what abortion is in the black community. Abortion is genocide. We're not able to reproduce. We're not able to keep up with our population.
Right.
And that's why Hispanics have overcome the black community. And it's a crisis.
And Stephanie's with MoveOnUp.org, and in St. Louis, Torre, who I know you, CL, that expression.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Torre had, he made the remarks, Lila, you heard him say, I thank God for abortion, and abortion saved my life. And I just thought, how unbelievably tone deaf is that to be able to say something, especially when you consider its inception and how it was popularized in the United States.
Well, and you look at, we're talking about in the black community an abortion rate that's sky high, and the abortion rate is over 1 million a year across the country. Children are killed by abortion, and a black baby is almost as likely to be aborted today as he or she is to be born. But then you look at the stories of women, a black woman, 24-year-old Tonya Reeves from Chicago. She bleeds for 5 hours, and that last summer, just last summer 2012, bleeds to death for 5 hours in a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic in Chicago, and they don't call the ambulance, they don't want to cause a scene. The young woman dies, leaves behind her 1-year-old son, Alvin. So you consider the death on the side of the children being murdered, and then these young girls, these women who are just being butchered by these abortionists. Just last week, Carhart, a late-term abortionist, killed a girl named Jennifer Morelli, and her son, of course, was killed too, but she died after a botched abortion in Maryland. It's horrific across the board.
You wonder, how does it happen? How does that happen? Why are these women dying in these clinics? What are the standards?
Well,
the standards of care.
What are the standards? And abortion is dangerous. The uterus is meant to be a safe place. The womb is meant to be the safest place in the world for the child. And this is a delicate part of the woman's body. That's her biggest artery, is the uterine artery. And so when you talk about stuffing things into her body like that to suck out, it's totally unnatural. It's brutal, and it's killing some of our women. This is
violence against women.
It is the war on women. It is the war on women.
And when you look at that, black people vote against their own interest. Vote against their own core values. But when you point that out, you become the enemy.
Yeah.
You become evil for saying that. But when we talk about this particular issue, and I really believe this, that this issue will become one of the threads to unravel our country into the next civil war.
And don't you kind of get the idea as well, and I mentioned this earlier, it doesn't help when we have stewards of the faith that kind of go along with this. Now, I mentioned that Torre came to St. Louis University, a Catholic institution, and it's not just Catholicism, this is across the board. And even after what he said about abortion, for Black History Month, he was the keynote speaker for Black History Month, and you and the group MoveOnUp.org were outraged. Tell me a little bit about what your reaction was when you heard this.
Well, when I originally heard this, I was outraged, mainly because I'm a mother and I have children. And I know my children will be going to these universities, knowing that this man is there indoctrinating these children. his views are just totally different than ours. And his views on abortion is just the same as Margaret Sanger's. It's just terrible. So we were really outraged, and so we decided to bring this to the public. Let's bring some attention to this. But most of all, let's talk about the abortion, what's happening in our community. Let's talk about genocide.
That's so good, because I think the more we get out there as women and men, all of us together, and saying, look, this is not empowering women. This is making women powerless. A woman, I mean, a famous feminist said, a woman wants an abortion as much as an animal caught in a trap wants to gnaw off its own arm. I mean, no woman wakes up one day and says, I want to have an abortion. But groups like Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger attacking the Black community is going out there saying, this is the solution to women's problems. This is going to empower you. It's a bunch of lies.
And it's sold as family planning.
Right.
Just sick.
And that is words at mischief. If you misuse words, they can become very mischievous. For instance, my mother, if she had aborted me, if yours had aborted us, she would still be walking around, but you wouldn't. But my mom's now in the grave, and no part of me went with her. So that tells us something. It tells me that I'm independent of her body. I have 3 daughters. Each one of them, of course, I want them to be able to do what they want to do with their own bodies. But I don't want them to be able to destroy my grandchildren.
Right. And that Planned Parenthood ad, when they came out, they had all of these young girls. Mom, I'm your daughter. Think about me when you vote. And they brought up abortion. And I'm watching this. I have sons. I would love to have a daughter someday. And I would love to, a daughter-in-law someday. And I'm watching this ad, and I could not believe what these daughters were being subjected to, these children. They're preaching against their own self-interest, against their own survival. When you saw that ad, because you and Planned Parenthood have gone round and round before, and this is even after all of that. What was when you saw that? What was your response?
Well, Dana, the response was, as a woman, I look at this whole agenda, which is make women sexually available to men, make them take the risk of hormonal contraception, which can cause these problems, make them say, I need to be sexually available and I need to be equal with men in this way and have no consequences. But we're not made that way. Fertility is a gift. And so women are getting pregnant, and, oh, you're pregnant? It's your problem. And the man is considered somehow a good man if he pays for it. And then you go and get an abortion, and the woman suffers the rest of her life with that decision she made. So this is the system that they set up, and they're calling it feminism. And it's absurd. And we as women, we reject it, because this is not true feminism. True feminism is saying, no man's going to tell me to kill my baby.
That's right.
No man's going to tell me what to do to kill my baby. And this is a gift, and I'm going to do what I can to protect this gift. And before that, I'm not going to be sexually available for any man that comes my way. And that's the attitude of true feminism.
There.
That's true power.
Yeah.
And men are cut out. Did you see any men in that ad, CL? No. Because you don't contribute anything, I mean.
And that's the message. And that's the message that really has resonated among Black men in particular, is that we have a way out. And when I was coming along, the true measure of a man is if you stepped up to the plate. And that has left our society at this point in time. We sacrifice our children at the altar of convenience, and it is an evil that will destroy us as a society if, in fact, we don't reverse this trend.
And this has been sold to the American public as this is, this is a helpful thing for you, and it really. Lower income families are really targeted. Lower income families are being blown apart. They're told that you have no other way out. And this is how, and you've noted this before, you talked about this in Runaway Slave. This has been noted since the time of LBJ, that this has been going on, building humanity up to the point where people can be indispensable if they are somehow an inconvenience.
Right. You mentioned LBJ, the Great Society, as it was stated. The Great Society turned into a situation for Black people in particular to be a test tube case that is now beginning to affect the rest of us. And the hypocrisy of those on the left to still trumpet those types of ideas in 2013 among a population that is financially depressed, and certainly in the neighborhoods, in the neighborhoods in the inner city. You know this in the inner city.
Right
we live in the
you
city.
know this.
It's right that we see it.
You can see the effects of the Great Society. You want to know what socialism looks like? We say it in the film. take a look at the inner city black community.
And we see, especially with this life movement, I read an article the other day where pro-choice or pro-genocide folks are very worried because the pro-life movement is very young. You have people like Lila Rose out there. You have people like and Move On Up that are out there protesting and bringing this message. And you're out there recruiting youthful folks every single day.
Yes, indeed.
The message, the people who are being attracted to this message are getting younger. And I read NARAL was absolutely up in arms. They were terrified. I could do this conversation all day. And I know that I'm so glad that you all were able to be here because this is so important. I want to thank each of you so much.
You,
Well, thank you,
CL,
Dana.
Stephanie, Lila, I appreciate it. Our religious and our family values, folks, they're being tarnished by the glitz and glam of Hollywood every single day. And we're going to talk about that next.